Lost in Random is a game that has left me ambivalent like few others have. That is by no means to say it's bad. From the witty dialogue to the distinctly unique ambiance to the jaw-dropping art style, it's evident that this is a passion project. And for the first few hours of this 10 to 12 hour adventure, facets of the actual gameplay only heighten the experience. However, Lost in Random is ultimately imperfect due to structural oversights that disservice its otherwise enticing content. It takes place in the sprawling and fantastical kingdom of Random, which is made up of 6 key areas representing the 6 faces of a die. Each area is unique in terms of economic status, the higher number, the higher social class. You play as Even, a slingshot-wielding 11-year-old girl from the slums of Woncroft, who takes it upon herself to save her older sister Odd from the clutches of the Queen all the way in Sixtopia. To do so, she'll also need to journey through 2 Town, 3dom, Forburg, and 5 Tropolis, each of which feature individual dilemmas you must solve to progress. Along the way, you'll also meet a unique cast of characters, such as a mayor that has an evil counterpart living in his hat, a friendly, 3-eyed monster, and most notably, a sentient die called Dicey, who helps Even every step of the way. Aside from Dicey, who only communicates in gibberish, each character provides comical dialogue. Examples include the etiquette-obsessed Duke, who won't talk to you until you form a proper greeting, and the janitor, who mistakes Even for a cardboard cutout. Comical is really where it begins and ends, though. The narrative is far too sporadic to leave room for more in-depth and emotional characterization. Sadly, this is also the case for characters present from beginning to end, who are rarely seen throughout the actual adventure and only fleshed out within segmented dream sequences. It's also worth mentioning that this game features a narrator. Just uttering those words evokes trauma from Biomutant, and yet here he's more so a welcome addition, as he provides effective comic relief that only ever occurs at scripted moments instead of pretentious and spontaneous remarks. His inclusion also helps to highlight this game's approach to storytelling, which is reminiscent of a fairy tale and even Tim Burton-esque, so it's fitting that the art style feels right out of Nightmare Before Christmas. Moreover, as does the world design. The entire kingdom is haunted by a persistent gloom, but each location feels unique. The most memorable being the Halloween Town-inspired 2 Town, the medieval kingdom within 3dom, and my favorite, Forburg, which takes the shape of a carnival. Although they're atmospherically distinct, unfortunately they're formulaically similar. Aside from Woncroft, which lays the foundations out as a tutorial, each area follows an episodic storyline that requires you to find items and people that are eventually fundamental to you reaching your next destination. As it is a very vague structure that isn't mimicked in any specific manner among all 6 areas, this may seem to be an unfair complaint. And if each area's story was backed by thematic and fitting puzzles, it absolutely would be. However, aside from only 2 stealth sections, the gameplay comes almost exclusively in the form of combat, which leads to each mission objective feeling meaningless. For what it's worth though, the combat on its own is good. Even may seem to be an unequipped fighter, however, Slingshot, some magical cards she finds along the way, and Dicey do come in handy. Each enemy has a crystal shard on its body, which Even can shoot to gain energy points. This energy is used to power up the cards in her hand, which are assigned to numerical values and provide health potions, weapons, powers, and more. Once you have at least 1 card filled up, you can stop time, roll Dicey, pick the cards you want to use based on the number you rolled, and put them into effect. Some enemies do have nuances that lead to some cards being more or less effective. However, when it comes to the enemies themselves, not that much strategic thought is required, but there is a level of strategy in terms of how you dispatch them. Considering the title, it's fitting that this system heavily relies on RNG. During a battle, you may consistently get cards that are extremely powerful, but keep rolling 1s, or you may keep rolling 6s with cards that are effectively useless. This at times can be frustrating. However, because you can customize your deck and the further you get in the game, the higher numbers you can roll, this is rarely a proper nuisance. Aside from more powerful cards and higher rolls, these are the fundamentals at the beginning that remain exactly the same until the end. The problem with the combat isn't that it isn't innovative, but it isn't able to consistently innovate, meaning I got burnt out less than halfway through. It really doesn't help that it's all the gameplay has to offer, and there's never any hesitation for the player to be met with a horde of enemies, no matter the situation. Even with all this considered, it's confusing just how far the developers went with its implementation. This game is twice as long as it really should have been, entirely due to dragged out encounters. At the end of one, whenever a new enemy appears after you thought you killed the last, it never invokes a feeling of dangerous excitement, rather dreadful monotony. This would still be the case if you were to beat the game in its entirety without a single death. However, when you're close to the end of a battle and mess up, that's when all this watering down and padding out becomes irredeemable. Perhaps even worse is that the emotionally intensive final events of the narrative feel completely unearned, as the surplus of combat not only splices up the story far beyond for the sake of better pacing, but in instances feels like it's replacing it. All in all, Lost in Random is a concept with lots of potential that isn't fully wasted. The art direction, world design, and even aspects of its story are executed with gusto. However, the combat, while innovative and satisfying, is overused to the point of tedium, frustration, and being a detriment to the story.